Thank you for the time. I'm a huge fan. I mean, I love Drew Carey back in the day. You guys had
Thanks.
such an amazing team for that show. But
Yeah.
the first thing I wanted to ask you was about working as a late night host because there's been a few over the years, and I don't think many of them stood out particularly. But your show was you were always trying different things, and it was always funny. What did it take to make a good late night show?
I think when I think about it, that one of the reasons I think the late night show worked was that I didn't really have any connection really to late night in the sense I didn't grow up in the history of it. I wasn't connected to it in that way. And so the the job itself for me was I loved doing it, but I didn't have any preconceived notions of how it should look. I had a very talented and experienced producer, Peter Lassalle, looking after me, and another gentleman by the name of Mike Nadis, who kind of steered me through that world. But I didn't really know anything about it, and so I think it helped to not have any ideas of how I should be. I just did it, and I enjoyed it. But I'm glad I don't do it anymore. It's a lot of work. Like to do a show every night is I'm too old for that now. I think.
Well, I just love the fact that you did stuff like you went to Versailles. You also didn't punch down. I mean, or even at least sideways or whatever you want to say. Like, I like the fact that there were points where you made decisions that you weren't going to mock people per se.
Yeah, I mean, you talking about that monologue years and years ago where I mentioned Britney Spears and the trouble she was in. It's funny that that's come, excuse me, that's come back around many times, the discussion of that monologue. Excuse me, but really it's a case by case basis.
Of course,
I think that the danger was, to have a manifesto about this is how comedy should be. I don't have that manifesto. I don't have any manifesto for how anyone else should do it. It's just that, in the moment, I think because of the nature of how I do the job, you live by your wits. So you make a decision right there and right then about what you're going to do at that point. And that's what that was about. And, I mess it up sometimes, but, other times I don't. That's really kind of it, I think.
But that's my next question is a lot of your stand-up comes across as very in the moment. Do you actually have somewhat of a plan when you go into stand-up, or is it a lot of, well, I might do this, but then we'll see what else fits in, or how do you plan your stand-up?
Well, a little, like you say, I mean, I think it would be slightly disrespectful to an audience to turn up with no idea of what you're going to talk about. But it changes from night to night. I don't think I'm technically gifted enough or talented enough a performer um, to learn it and do it the same way every night. I would get bored. I'm not clever enough to do that. So I think that being in the moment and reacting, because I like to feed off the energy of the room and the crowd, and I like to, I can't pretend they're not there. So they are there. So if they don't like something I say, that can be a lot of fun, and if they do like it, that can also be a lot of fun. And I think to keep spontaneity is it keeps it playful. It keeps an element of it keeps it organic. But there are things, of course, there are things that I have. There are set pieces that I do because you need to have them. But I think if there's any skill in what I do as a stand-up, it's you shouldn't be able to tell the difference whether whether I'm it's off the top of my head or I've done it 50 times. What the actress Uta Lemper called the illusion of spontaneity. I mean, it should feel like all of it is off the top of my head. Not all of it is, but sometimes a lot of it is, and I don't really know how it's going to go.
I was just listening to your 2020 stand-up that you had on Spotify, which there's so many great moments in that. One of the things, though, that stood out for me was just the fact you were talking about not filming more stand-up. I'm just curious, how has your vision on that changed, or what's your take on recording stand-up now?
I'm not in a huge hurry to record. I mean, the show that I'm doing now is all new, and I have no desire to film it. I don't think it needs to be filmed all the time. For me, I like. Look, I think at this point, I'm 60 years old. If you're coming to see me, you know who I am. You've seen me before. It's not like I have to do an advert. It's like you either want to see me or you don't. There's nothing really I can do about it at this point. So I don't know. Also, for a lot of people, stand up works really well when it's filmed. I don't know how well mine works. I don't know if I've ever seen a stand up special of mine and gone, that was as good as it was on the night. I don't think it ever is. I think that I'm kind of a live band, and I think I think my stuff works best in the room, in the moment, on the night. And you can record it the same way you can record a plane landing, but to get the effect, you kind of have to be there.
That's a very good analogy. In terms of JFL 42, you're coming to Toronto to perform, which I'm mainly curious about. Do you bring different things to different places? Like, are you thinking as you're stepping up on stage in Toronto versus New York or somewhere else, oh, this is something I've got to say here?
Well, yeah, in the sense that, everything has an organic nature. So, if I'm in Toronto, I'm not going to pretend I'm in New York or Detroit. And similarly, if I'm in these places, if I'm at JFL in Toronto, that's what I'm doing that day. So that's what that's going to be in my head. And I'm not going to ignore it. So do I bring anything in particular for it? Just the immediacy of the experience, but not yet anyway. Do I have any preconceived kind of bits that I'll do in Toronto? I tend to when I'm in Canada because I don't know why. Well, I think I do know why that Scotland and Canada have a very clear connection, and I feel like I can tease Canadians a little more than perhaps than perhaps would be allowed if I was just a visiting American. Do you know what I mean? I think I'm allowed a little more leeway, but perhaps I'm wrong, and perhaps I'll find that out this year.
Do you get to do stand up in Scotland very often anymore, or is that something you do?
No, not really. I don't. I did the Edinburgh Festival about 3 years ago because someone asked me to do it, and I thought it would be a nice idea, and I did it, and I loved it. But the Edinburgh Festival is it's a big festival, and it's set in Scotland, but it's not really entirely. I mean, the audiences are from all over the world, so I found that I think 60 or 70% of my audience were visiting Americans anyway, Americans and Canadians who were on vacation. So I don't really in Scotland. I don't know why. I just don't. I don't. It doesn't come up somehow.
As you're out in the world these days, how often though do you find that you're recognized as, oh, it's the Scottish dude? Like, does that kind of weigh into how people see you still?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, it happens. It happens all the time. It's a lot of people couldn't sleep for a long time, so I think that plays into it. And then I've been on television for a long time. I mean, the Drew Carey show was 25 years ago. I mean, it's you kind of get in with the bricks, I think, at a certain point.
Well, on the same note, I saw your King Charles bit as well from a number of years ago, and in this frame of reference today, what would you ever revisit doing that, or is it too cheeky, or what do you think of that now?
I never, and it is a policy of mine, not just about this, but everything else. I never apologize or explain for any piece of comedy I've done in the past, ever.
I do think there's a great opportunity though for you to to put on that look again, perhaps, but
We'll see.
we'll see.
We'll see.
I know you don't touch politics, so maybe this is too political at this point now. But I think a lot of people get a kick out of it.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think that it's right now. Every story requires the input of every person. I don't know if I need to be part of that. I quite like to. No, I don't like to dance when the bell rings. So if you say do that, I will think, no, then I won't. And then if someone says don't do that, then maybe I will. I don't know how. I don't know how it works. I'm not quite sure how it works yet.
Well, the last thing I want to know is what inspires you for comedy, and what inspires your funny bone.
Anything that makes me laugh, really. I mean, it really is. That's the yardstick. If I say something, it's because I think it's funny, and it at some point has made me laugh, or made someone that I spend my time around laugh. What it tends to be is absurdist and surreal kind of nonsense makes me laugh, but it can be anything. I tend not to be, as you say, I tend not to kind of do political stuff. It's because it's kind of a stylistic choice. I mean, I'm sure you know Jim Gaffigan, who's a fabulous comedian, one of the best working ever. And Jim can be just as salty as anyone else backstage about any number of topics, but he makes a stylistic choice to do a show which is family friendly. And I, while I'm nowhere near as talented as Jim, I make the same choice about politics and current affairs. I don't really want it to be part of the show. I don't. And so I have opinions on all these things, but I just don't want to put it in. I'm more comfortable and I'm more drawn to absurdist anecdotal comedy than I am to immediate hot button topic comedy.
Well, thank you very much for the time. I really appreciate it. I am a very big fan. It's fantastic to talk to you.
Thanks very much.